The next topic I wanted to talk about, again, close to my work and my passion, is assault at the
Mm,
workplace, of all places, a place where
mm,
you think that you would be safe, not necessarily psychologically
right.
safe, because that's a whole other topic, but
That's a whole other
you would
topic.
assume that you would be physically safe.
Mm.
So can you just share a bit of the story of what happened?
Yeah, yeah. So at the time, I was managing on Wall Street, no surprise, a group that was largely men.
Hmm.
And I was a new manager. And I was managing men, many of them at that point double my age because I was like in my, early 20s. And
Hmm.
one of my people on my team was having an affair with a client, which is completely inappropriate and wrong, etc. And I told my boss about it, and he said, "Well, we're not going to fire him." Because I always joke this guy had something better than a 4.0 from Harvard. He was like a scratch golfer. He got these guys tee times at any golf course in Europe and the States, etc.
Hmm.
So the suggestion was, you know what? How about you just take him off of that account coverage? So he can have an affair with her, but it won't be his direct client. So I pulled
Which
him
would be a
aside at the
smart
right.
solution.
It was a smart solution. And so I pulled him aside at the end of the day because you always send bad messages at the end of the day, right? So there's like if
Mhm.
anyone storms off, no one sees it. And I told him, and it wasn't necessarily a ding to him because I was giving him similar sized accounts. And so I
Mhm.
pulled him aside, I told him what was going on, and I also didn't want to look like I was targeting him. So I had moved everyone else's coverage around. So it was just kind of part of a bigger reorg.
Mm.
And he just lost it on me. And, I told him, with my like very optimistic face. And then
Mhm.
he took the piece of paper, threw it in my face, charged at me, pinned me up against the wall, grabbed me by my throat. It all happened. I mean, you remember it in slow motion, but it's like
Right.
seconds.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
so shocked. Everyone was gone. And
Mhm.
he told me he wanted to rip my effing face off. And I just remember it was just like unbelievable to me. And
Mhm.
I kind of felt like, you see in the movies when you have like a crazy hostage, you're trying to like talk them off the ledge.
Yeah.
And within probably, again, it felt like an hour, but within a few seconds, he released me and stormed out. And
Mm.
I was hysterical, that as you can imagine. And
Yes.
I went home, I talked about it with my husband, I came in the next day and I told my boss, because surely they wouldn't tolerate this,
Right,
and
surely.
my surely, and my boss said that although I was welcome to complain about it to my HR division, that was completely available, they were not getting rid of him. So imagine how difficult it would be to continue to manage him with him knowing I tried to, rat him out to HR. And so here
Mm.
I was in my like late 20s, or I was probably in my mid to late 20s, and it was my first shot at being a manager.
Right.
Again, to our earlier theme, when I first started at Goldman, I didn't have the traditional finance background. Everyone's like, "You'll never make it here." Again, I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted
Mhm.
to continue going up the chain, so I kept my mouth shut and I didn't say a thing.
Wow.
And the guy is still working to this day,
Of course.
of
Oh
course.
my God. It blows my mind as someone who's never really had a corporate job. I've been working for myself, right? I've
Mm,
never had to deal with anything like that. So, but I know there are plenty of people listening that are in toxic work environments that probably don't feel safe all the time. Again, either emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or possibly physically.
yeah.
What is there any advice for folks like that?
Yeah, I mean, part of the issue why I tolerated what I did, and it's kind of going back to like I felt like I was a prisoner there, which was so strange
Mm.
because the door was never locked. Like I was so
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs was very good at making me feel I was nothing without them, nothing without their name, nothing without their money. I really felt that if I left, I would like never work again. They literally told you that every day. So
Wow.
looking back, and I have 3 daughters. I mean, looking back, I think the biggest key for people in the workforce today, especially people who feel like they are the other in their organization, is to
Mhm.
really make sure you have, like, a mentor outside the organization to sanity
Mm,
check your experiences because I
mm,
didn't. I mean, I had my
yeah,
husband and my husband, was completely irate over the whole thing, but
yeah,
at the same time, he was never gonna be the one, at least in that early part of the year, who was gonna force me to leave. Like,
right.
acco from my friends and my close friends and family's perspective, I was the expert on Goldman Sachs. Nobody knew that place better than I did. I just
Right.
wish at the time I had had a mentor, a senior woman in the industry at another firm who could possibly
Mm,
say to me, "Now wait a second, Jamie, like,
mm,
this is grounds for XYZ." And so what I try to tell the women in the workplace that I coach today is like, get
mhm.
those ears out of your world so they can see things that you may not see because you're so enmeshed in that one culture.
Right. I love that. So because there's lots of as a speaker, I speak a lot to internal ERGs, right? Like the women's group of Nike or
Mhm.
some bank or whatever. But then I speak at other organizations that are like associations. So the Women's Council of Realtors are going to get people from all different companies.
Yes.
Crew, commercial real estate women. These are associations of women that are coming together from different businesses and doing that. So great reminder if you're out there listening to find some type of mentor or group like that. Yeah,
And a
great
lot of
idea.
those affinity groups are perfect for that
Mhm.
because they understand, but they're not in your world, just to have a sanity check.
Right. Which this question, I know, even with the background that you just shared, I was thinking it while I'm listening to the book, and I'm sure other people are listening to it. Not just why didn't you leave, but why couldn't you go to another bank? Now
Mm.
I'm wondering, is it because all banking, all like the culture was similar everywhere?
So I I don't know if I think I might have touched on it like in a line or two. The
Mm.
problem was I had gotten too senior at, like, the best bank on Wall Street.
Is it
So
okay? I see. I don't have that
yeah. So
reference.
the way it works in, like, the hierarchy of Wall Street, like, if you're a vice president, like, don't get me wrong, congratulations, but, like, a lot of people stay at that level, but once you hit the managing director, now you're kind of in, like, rarefied air. So what I
Mm,
observed was I got really close to the competitor, but they were like, "Jamie,
mm.
we don't think the job is big enough for you. You're an MD at Goldman." And I was like, "Show me the job." I'm willing.
Right.
We don't think we should pay you enough. We don't think it's gonna challenge you enough.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
that's part of the problem. So it was very hard to leave externally because Goldman at that time especially had that reputation of, Goldman's here, everyone else is here. So if you're senior at Goldman, man, we gotta have something good for you. On top of that, I wanted to move laterally, go to
Mhm.
another division within the firm. The problem with that is those promotions, you wanna use that promotion to help continue to inspire your pipeline of talent. You wanna
Yeah.
grow from within. So to have a managing director from a different division walk in, that might really hurt morale of all the hungry VPs in the
Mhm.
department who want to aspire to be an MD. So
Right.
fortunately, unfortunately, I almost got too senior that I was locked.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm sure it's so much more complicated than it might sound, and
Yeah.
as I said those words, like, "Why couldn't you leave?" I'm very aware of this is what a lot of people think and say to women who are victims of all kinds of abuse. So I'm very aware that I just, I said that in that way, but it was more out of curiosity. Like, what were the options? What was it like? Share that with us because I'm sure it's
No, and I'll
enough.
never forget, my dear editor, Stephanie, who, like, I love from
Mm,
Simon& and Schuster, like, her note to be like, "And why didn't you
mm.
leave?
Oh,
And
wow.
now why didn't you leave? And for all things holy, Jamie, why didn't you leave?" And, and if she really helped me realize when for lack of
Mhm.
better words, it was kind of a cult.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll binge watch things on Netflix that talk about different religious cults and stuff, and I see a lot of similarities. And from the
Mhm.
first day I was there, when they said, "You hit the lottery to be here, getting into Goldman is harder than getting into Harvard, so you better not mess up." I felt like I was Charlie Bucket from Willy Wonka who got the golden ticket, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
every day since, it was like, people would kill for this job, people are lying down the street from this job, so, like, I really felt I couldn't go anywhere else, and that was
Mhm.
the
Mm.
twisted truth. I felt a prisoner, but the door wasn't locked, and I could have left whenever I wanted to. So
Mhm.
I'm so grateful I left when I did, but I thank God I could
Yeah.
have left so many years sooner. I would have been fine because what they were
Right.
telling me were lies.
Right, right. It's like you mentioned in the book, Stockholm syndrome. Say
Yeah,
more about that.
yeah. I mean, it's astounding to me that, and I think the other problem too, Jen, is that we're there all day long, every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I got there.
I kept thinking, how does this woman take care of her body, her health? Like, she's working all the time.
I, like, literally was at my desk by 6:30 in the morning.
Ugh.
If I didn't have a client dinner, I would leave at 6 or 6:30. If I were out with clients, I wouldn't, leave till midnight. So, like, I would always joke, I would never see the changing of the leaves in New Jersey until the weekends because I would
Wow.
leave in the dark and I would come home in the
Mhm.
dark. And so
Awful.
that really gets you that, yeah, of course I had a husband and kids and a mother, but it was not like I was around them. I was always in this like cocoon. I mean, in fact, they used to call the trading just the casino because like there were no windows. You didn't even
Oh,
know
wow.
what the weather was like outside. You didn't even know what time it was. So I think that kind of tight-knit
Mm,
community on top of the very clear message from senior management that was echoed on every level. I mean, I
mhm,
even joke, like, when people would leave Goldman for other opportunities, it was
mhm,
never a nice breakup with Goldman. It was never an amicable breakup. It was a messy divorce. Even if
mm.
people were leaving for better opportunities, literally, they'd be like, "Pff, lots of luck. You'll be regretting this. You'll be coming crawling back in a couple months. You could only leave Goldman once. You better make sure it's for something good." So literally,
Wow.
that's what I was always observing, and it really made me feel like I needed more money than I did. I needed to
Mhm,
stay there longer than I did. Because the
mhm,
fact of the matter is I was never and no disrespect to the women who are, I was never a Louboutin, Chanel
mhm,
wearing girl. I mean, I
mhm.
proudly wore my Coach outlet purses and, got my
And
suits
your
from
TJ Maxx
my
TJ
TJ
Maxx
Maxx
suits.
suit.
Yeah.
In fact, my tit well, I got to go on the Today Show, which was really awesome, and
Wow.
I had a dress from Macy's, and I had shoes from DSW. Like, so
Love it.
those things just never, like,
Mhm,
scratched my itch. So but they made me feel like I
mm,
was being offered this buffet of money and opportunity, like an all-you-can-eat buffet,
mhm.
and if I left, I'd go into, like, a desert where there's no food and water,
Right,
so I had to get it while I could. It's just
right, right.
really crazy how organizations can wield their influence and power on people.
Totally. And I mean, a few things ran through my mind, but about like the whole having this uh okay, I was in a terrible relationship before I moved out to Los Angeles. I write about it like so briefly in my book, but it felt I was in an environment where it felt a little cultish. And I had this relationship with like the guru person and it
Mhm.
ended very poorly. And I still stuck around for pretty much another year of like again, pretty toxic environment for me anyway, but I was so ingrained in the culture. So that's where I can
Yeah.
I can empathize
Yes.
here. Like I get it. You're just
Yeah.
so ingrained, indoctrined in this philosophy, whatever that philosophy is. So wow, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
And it's I always have to say this very delicately because I don't want to insult anyone who's been
Sure.
like an abusive relationship, but I feel like in a
Yeah,
lot of ways, Goldman was like an abusive boyfriend, you
sure,
know?
sure.
And I gave a talk right after my book came out, and a woman came up to me and she said she had been in a toxic relationship with a man for 20 years, and it
Mhm.
paralleled my story exactly, except instead
Wow.
of a person, it was an organization.